All right. Great. Good morning, everyone. So, welcome back to our summer learning series with Khan Academy for New Hampshire educators. Just a reminder that this is part of our summer learning path because we are working to enroll all of you into our partnership for back to school. That includes khanmigo, the district partnership, and if you use Map Growth and Clever learning paths. And that is going to be our last session next Tuesday. But today we are going to learn from Sarah Robinson around writing coach. And I just want to remind you who we are again. Danielle Sullivan, Senior Regional Manager, Northeast District Partnership. Barbara Campbell is your District Success Manager. And Crystal Hercules. Actually, she was starting, but we actually have a new PL person that's going to be joining us in New Hampshire. So after Sarah shares today, I'll just remind everyone, if you haven't signed up for a partnership yet, how you can do so. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Sarah.
Hey everyone, thank you for welcoming me. I'm going to be sharing my screen now. All right. Can you all see khanmigo writing coach? Okay, great. Thank you for welcoming me, Danielle. I'm really excited to be here. As Danielle said, I'm Sarah Robertson. I am the Senior Product Manager at Khan Academy for Literacy and Classroom Experiences. I'm also a former middle school ELA and humanities teacher in New England. I taught in Boston for 6 years, and I was a curriculum writer and a teacher, instructional trainer. And, when I was teaching, I think one of the things that really stuck out to me as a teacher in Boston specifically was, not only did I have many, many students who were reading and writing below grade level, but I had about 100 students that I was responsible for each year. I don't know, kind of what the student teacher ratios are where you all are, but being an ELA teacher in Boston meant that, every time I assigned one essay to my students, I had about, 100 drafts, single drafts to give feedback on. I had 100 students to support through all stages of the writing process. And I think I counted in one school year, I had to give feedback on 2,500 essays for a single school year. And when I was teaching ELA, I worked 12 hours a day, nearly every weekend. I still felt like I could never get to all the students in my class who needed help. I could never keep a close enough eye on the students who really needed my help the most because they often weren't the ones asking for it. I couldn't get feedback to my students quickly enough as hard as I tried. And I never really knew, like, at any given moment exactly where my students stood. And I was very burnt out. I loved it, but I was very burnt out. And this was before COVID learning loss. This was before generative AI and its impact on ELA teachers. So I have a lot of empathy for teachers today. And I did a little dive into, because I'm now representing teachers who are ELA teachers in 2024, and I haven't been in the classroom for a while now. I often hang around in these, ELA teacher Facebook groups just to see what teachers are talking about. And on the right side here, you can see some just recent quotes from teachers who have been just talking about how hard it is specifically to teach writing in 2024. You have teachers talking about kids, in sixth grade not being able to write a single paragraph. Teachers saying like they do not know how to get grading back on time. It's extremely overwhelming. How do English teachers assign essays at all? And then on our side, on Khan Academy, we interview teachers and we co-create with teachers constantly. And some things that we've heard just recently are, with writing, it's just so hard. I've heard that more than once. It's just so hard. And on top of that, we had teachers talk about this new need of like wanting and needing proof that a student wrote what they said that they wrote. And so I think just in the past couple of years, what we've seen, in addition to just the overwhelm that teachers already had, is how hard AI has made their jobs. Here's a couple of my favorite quotes here. I've seen several AI checkers online recently. How accurate would you say those are? They're not, and it's true. And another one just says, I hate AI. And this one, it's going to drive me out of education. So this is clearly a new issue that I personally didn't experience when I was a teacher that I think we all need to be paying attention to. And at Khan Academy, I think, we are all very well known, of course, for being a wonderful STEM resource for teachers. But our mission has always been to provide a free world-class education to anyone, anywhere. And so we've had this long-standing desire to put out humanities content, to help ELA teachers, to put out reading and writing resources. But, as somebody who developed another ed tech product for ELA in the past, I know how hard it can be to do that, because you need to worry about content. You need to figure out, how do you integrate this, into the teacher's routines, specifically for ELA, can be really challenging. So when we partnered with OpenAI in late 2022, immediately we saw the ways that it could actually, instead of continuing to hurt ELA teachers' lives, it could actually help them, and it could help students too. So we started thinking about, what do we know about writing? And we know that students obviously are expected to meet grade level standards. They are supposed to be writing 60 minutes per day, if you can believe that. They need support, not just with feedback part. They need support through the whole writing process, from the very beginning of getting that essay prompt. And if they're going to grow their writing skills, then the feedback that they receive needs to be specific, needs to be actionable, it needs to be personalized, and it needs to be timely. And without that, it is very hard for a student to improve their writing skills. But in reality, what we see, and I'm sure you all are very familiar with these stats, only about a quarter of students meet grade level writing standards. And this data is from before the pandemic. Less than 10% are actually writing 60 minutes a day. And it is basically impossible for one teacher, with the number of students that they have, to support every student throughout the entire writing process and give feedback in a timely manner. If you are grading, giving feedback on 100 essays as a teacher because you have 100 students, then and you're limiting yourself. I used to do this. I would set a timer on my iPhone, 10 minutes per kid. That's it. Like, I would mark up their paper, fill out a very rough rubric, 10 minutes per kid, 17 hours for one essay draft. It is impossible. It is impossible. So when we decided to start thinking about this as a problem that we wanted to try to solve at Khan Academy, the first thing that we did in January 2023 was come up with a concept, right? We developed a prototype. It was part of an internal hackathon, and people immediately saw the power of something like this. I think one of our lead developers was like, I'm not a strong writer. I've never been a strong writer. I'm a math guy. I learned how to write a thesis statement. I didn't even know what a thesis statement was. And we were all like, good job, buddy. Like, it was like really inspiring to see the power of what this tool could do. So from there, we started building out more. We launched our college admissions essay activities. Those have been pretty popular. There's a give feedback on my admissions essay, and a help me brainstorm an admissions essay activity. And then in November of last year, we launched our essay feedback activity. And this was exciting because students could provide their first draft, and the AI would generate really, really high quality feedback and provide revision support on that first draft. And I'll show you a little bit more about how teachers and students responded to that later on. But from there, it became really clear, we want to keep building out backwards from the creation of the first draft and the submitting that for feedback. We want to build it back to before the student creates that first draft. So that led us to July last month, when we launched the student experience of Writing Coach, which is now available in khanmigo. And next month, we are gearing up for the teacher experience launch of Writing Coach. And I'm going to give you a full preview and demo of that in a moment. So that is kind of how we ended up where we are. And so when we launched essay feedback, we got a lot of positive feedback. We had teachers say that they were blown away with the quality of the feedback. It gave feedback that matched what they would have provided. This is something we heard over and over again. They couldn't believe that the feedback khanmigo provided was remarkably similar and sometimes more comprehensive than what they would have given the student. We had a student from Florida who does IB essay prep say that this was this tool made the most significant difference in helping their students grow than they've ever seen. And then there was one teacher in Ohio who used essay feedback consistently, and she was the only teacher who every single one of her students passed the state writing assessment. So we have a lot of positive feedback about this particular first version of this feedback and revision activity. But when we went into schools, we did a whole kind of listening tour in Indiana specifically. And something that a lot of teachers said was, yes, we love essay feedback, but I still have a large number of students, a non-insignificant number of students who cannot get that first draft. They cannot, they struggle to produce one draft to submit for feedback. So like, this is great for the kids who can do that. But for the many students I have who just cannot, for whatever reason, put pen to paper, don't really understand, they feel paralyzed, they feel like they just can't do it, we need something that does a little bit more. So that's where Writing Coach evolved into. And Writing Coach obviously has not been out in front of students yet because the school year hasn't started and we just launched it. But in our user tests, these were some of the things that teachers said when we demoed it for them and gave them a full kind of tour. And the purpose of this was to get their feedback on how we could make Writing Coach better. But by and large, they had very, very positive things to say. This is the answer to all of our dreams. This exceeded my expectations. This brightens my day and year. Teachers were chomping at the bit to get access to this as soon as possible. So before I dive into what Writing Coach is and how it looks, at a very high level, I'll actually start right to left here, and I'll say what Writing Coach is not, because you probably have been bombarded or you've heard about many different writing tools and writing solutions that are out there. I'm familiar with most of them. And it's not just a digital essay writing platform. We do those things, but that's not what it is. It's not an evaluative or grading tool for teachers. That isn't even something that I think we're considering building out. I don't really want to build a solution where students are producing essays with an AI, they get feedback from the AI grades it, and then they're done. I think writing is a human practice and a human activity, and I think there should be humans involved in that. And that means that there is a teacher at the end of the day reading students' writing, students are sharing their writing with their peers, but it's not 100% on the teacher for everything. It's not a productivity tool for students. So there's many AI writing tools out there, and the goal of them is to produce better writing. Our tool produces better writers. It's also not just a feedback generator or a tool that provides kind of easy to accept suggestions for improving grammar and mechanics. I'm a big Grammarly user. I love Grammarly, but this is very different from that. It doesn't suggest changes for you to just accept and then move on. It's an instructional tool. So the primary purpose is student learning and teacher transparency. It's designed to guide students through the entire process while preventing cheating. And it is a way for teachers to give students more practice writing, to give them the opportunity to get those 60 minutes in a day, and to give them real-time support. So tools like this really allow teachers in science class or history class to take a turn asking students to write, and they don't need to necessarily, hold their hands the whole way through, and kids can still get that feedback and that support that they need. And then, of course, it's also data dashboards for teachers. So it has at a glance and in-depth insights into student writing processes. All right, so let's dive into the student experience. Writing Coach, I'm going to show you a demo in just a second. With Writing Coach, students can get support through the entire writing process. So I'm going to show you the very first step, which is understanding the assignment and getting started. Then there's formulating ideas and outlining. Then there's drafting and getting unstuck from drafting if they need it. And then, of course, feedback and revising, that piece that we had originally had as well with essay feedback. And I just realized that I haven't pulled up the other prototype just yet for the teacher experience. So I'll make sure I'll do that in a second. But okay. Can you now see, do you see daylight savings time persuasive essay? Yes. Okay, great. So the essay writing process, as you're probably aware, is something that takes more than, 30 minutes. So I'm going to kind of try and give you a sense of what this looks like without, going too deep in the weeds. The very first step of writing coach actually starts with the teacher creating the assignment. So I'm skipping over that part, but a student can also go back and click begin new essay here, and they can actually kind of start their own if they want to. But if the teacher wants that data dashboard, then she can create the assignment herself and fill in the essay information. Okay, so when the student clicks on the assignment and they get here from their khanmigo learner activities page or from their assignments page, the first thing they do is they see khanmigo here, and khanmigo is explaining that we're going to write this essay, and these are the instructions from the teacher. And in this first step here, what we've done is we've programmed the AI to specifically focus on helping the student break down the prompt and understand the essay requirements. This is not really about necessarily like doing the research or getting evidence or starting the outlining process at all. This is just about making sure you understand what the expectations are before you move forward. So this is why it's really important when we train teachers on how to use Writing Coach that they are paying specific attention to this essay prompt and instructions. I don't know what the New Hampshire expectations are for writing, what your specific state rubric looks like, but we have an opportunity in this space to get specific so that khanmigo can make sure it's aligning its feedback and its guidance to your specific expectations in your state. So if there's like a certain way of, formatting an essay, or if there's a certain kind of citation that your teachers prefer, or, there's any kind of guidance like that, if your teacher's providing that in this instructions field, then khanmigo will take that context and it will craft the experience to align to whatever it is that you need. That also works at the teacher by teacher level. So if you have AP US history teachers who are doing DBQs, if you have, IB teachers, I spoke with a teacher just recently who does the Cambridge ACE writing program. And if you include that context in here, say this is a persuasive essay aligned to this framework, then khanmigo will take that into context and tailor it to those expectations. So when the student lands here, the ask from the student is just, first of all, do you have any questions about this? And if the student doesn't have any questions to start off, we have these kind of prompts here that they can click on just to kind of get a sense of what they're doing. So you can say, explain the essay type or ask for the requirements. But one of the things that we've seen students do a lot is kind of define terms in these prompts that are sometimes unfamiliar. So if I may not know the word articulate, I can say, what does articulate mean? Oops, what does articulate mean? Okay, it got what I tried to type there. So it defines words for me. It's also I'm noticing here that it's asking for a rebuttal, and maybe, I don't remember what a rebuttal is. So what is a rebuttal again? And it's going to give me an explanation of that. So when you respond to an opposing argument to show why your position is still strong in your essay, after you present an argument from the other side, you need to explain why your main argument is better. Okay, so what do I do now? All right, let's start by deciding whether you support or oppose daylight savings time. What are your initial thoughts on this topic? Once you have a position, we can move on to gathering evidence and organizing your arguments. So khanmigo is going to push them in the direction of what they should do next. So first it's asking me, do I have a stance on this? If I don't have a stance, it'll push me to the research. And again, if the teacher has specified, make sure that you do research, make sure you cite textual evidence, khanmigo will remind them to do those things. But if you're writing, an essay where they're kind of just supposed to write about general experience, then it will just kind of brainstorm that with them. So again, this is really important for specifying to khanmigo what you want from the students. So the student can kind of go on with this conversation as long as they need to, but when they are ready to move on, or when khanmigo has sort of recognized that they're good, then they can move on to outlining. In the outlining stage, we worked very closely with teachers here to find a an outlining structure, an outlining process that fit the needs of many, many different, kinds of writing and different ways that teachers teach outlining. So the beauty of this is that there really is a lot of flexibility here. So, the default has 3 body paragraphs, but you can add as many more body paragraphs as you want. You can remove body paragraphs to have fewer. If this is just, in Massachusetts, we had an open response that our 7th graders had to do. And that was typically just kind of one body paragraph with 3 evidence inside of it. So it's very kind of different. So you can structure it to work with, however the essay structure, the type of writing assignment that you need. You can remove evidence and sources. You can add reasoning and explanation and remove those as well. And again, khanmigo is always looking at those essay instructions the teacher provided. So if the teacher says this has to be 5 paragraphs, or you need to include at least 3 body paragraphs, or you need to have cited textual evidence, when the student tries to move on to drafting, it's going to check the outline and it's going to make sure that it's met those expectations. So if you haven't done those things, khanmigo will let you know, and the student will be prompted to kind of finish that work. So I'm going to actually jump over to this version because I don't want to have you sit through me copying and pasting into all these fields. So I have a filled in version of the outline here on this tab. And one thing I wanted to show you was I, at one point, had a main point in my 3rd body paragraph. Yeah. That was the counter argument, and I didn't provide the rebuttal. So my argument here is that daylight savings time shouldn't be observed anymore. In my 3rd body paragraph, my main point was daylight savings time helps save the environment, and I forgot to include the rebuttal. And so I asked khanmigo, can you check my 3rd body paragraph? And it told me, you need to, or where is it? The main point suggests that daylight savings time helps save the environment, which seems to be an argument in favor of daylight savings time. Since your thesis is against daylight savings time, this should be presented as a counter argument. And then the guidance it gives me is to add a counter argument and rebuttal to the outline so that I can make sure that I'm actually aligned to the point I'm trying to make here. This is something I frequently saw with my 7th graders. They sort of forgot what position they took and would sort of flip-flop between paragraphs. And again, like if at any point the student is just stuck, if they're just stuck, then they can just click this button, or they can say help. And that's often what we see, when we review chat, is like kids are just like, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. IDK, help me. And khanmigo is going to be there. And something we heard from teachers is that, a lot of kids are afraid to raise their hand. They're ashamed to go up to the front of the classroom. And it feels a little bit safer for kids who maybe are just too shy and typically don't ask for that kind of help because they don't want to be seen as needing help. And so it's just sort of another way to get that input, especially if, I remember being as a teacher just buzzing around the room, trying to check as many kids as possible. So this is always there for them. They can use it as a resource. So I'm going to move on now to drafting. And let me go back to, well, I think this is fine, actually. So I've already filled in the draft here because this is a previous essay. But if I hadn't filled in the draft, if I hadn't filled in the draft, obviously this would be empty. But then you have down here, the outline is the default. So this is the outline I just filled in. And then chat is here. If you need khanmigo, you can open khanmigo again. And it's always there for the student if they need to get help. And then they can also view their assignment instructions if needed. So when they're drafting, let me actually delete this so you can see. This is what they would see if they started here. And what we've done is we've allowed students to copy and paste from their outline into their draft. And again, if they get stuck at any point, they can ask khanmigo for help. So I'm just kind of pasting in here some of the stuff that I had from my outline. I'm going to go to chat and just say I'm stuck. Okay. let's work through this together. It looks like you're at the beginning stages of your draft. Let's start by expanding your introduction. Your introduction should hook the reader, provide some background, and state your thesis. You already have a thesis statement, so let's work on the hook and background information. How can you grab the reader's attention? Think about something interesting related to daylight savings time. What can you say to introduce the topic before stating your thesis? So it's prompting me to go back and fill in my introduction and kind of get that first paragraph out of the way. And then if I were to ask again, it would help me move on. And now I'm just going to say, can you please just write that first intro paragraph for me? It's always scary doing a live demo. Okay, good job. I understand you're feeling stuck, but it's important that you work through this yourself to develop your writing skills. Let's break it down together. ChatGPT would have happily done that for me. So if I'll show you in a moment what I mean, but let's say I am just not feeling like I want to do it myself. I open ChatGPT in another tab. I ask it to write, the whole essay for me or an intro paragraph for me. I come in here and I paste it in. It's gonna seem all hunky-dory for me on the student side until the teacher sees the report, and you'll see kind of what happens if a student does that. If you're pasting from your outline as a student into your draft, that's fine. But if you're pasting from somewhere else, that is something that we flag for teachers. Excuse me. Okay, so let me jump back over to, let's go. Oh yeah, this is the one that let me just grab the sample essay so I can move on. All right, so I'm going to show you now what it looks like to move on to revising. And I had actually already submitted this essay, so it was very quick, but you can see here that Khanmigo generated 12 suggestions for this first draft. Those are organized in these 5 different categories. Introduction, this is about their claim. Do they have a thesis and a claim that's aligned to the actual essay prompt? Have they fleshed out their introduction? Does it have enough context, etc.? Evidence, that is about the alignment of the evidence to the points they're trying to make, the way that they've argued their evidence, the way that they've chunked their evidence, if they've cited their evidence. Structure is, organization and structure. Conclusion is just the conclusion paragraph. And then style is really about style, tone, vocabulary, the formality of the writing. It's also, where Khanmigo will sometimes point out like grammar issues or awkward phrasing. So I'm going to just kind of show you, actually, are any of you familiar with the essay feedback activity? No? Okay, so you haven't seen this before. So in the revising portion, not only is Khanmigo generating the feedback, but it's also there as a revising tool. And we're working on something right now, actually, where we are, instead of just saying chat with Khanmigo about the feedback, we're actually breaking out the ways that you can chat with Khanmigo, because students were like not really understanding why they would chat or what they could do if they chatted. So we're showing them things like give an example of what you mean, explain this suggestion, and check my revision. Because what they can do, let's see if this one here, this one is talking about how I don't have enough context in my introduction. So in my introduction, I do the classic thing that my 7th graders would do and start it with a question. That was their favorite kind of hook. And then they just jump right into, it's for daylight savings time. Daylight savings time shouldn't be observed anymore. So I'm not explaining anything about what daylight savings time is, where it comes from, the history behind it. And Khanmigo's pointing that out to me. Like a strong essay would sort of give that very quick summary. And now I'm like, okay, what do you mean by context? Like, how do I add context? I'm going to say, give me an example. And what it's not going to do is give me the sentence that to provide the context for daylight savings time. What it is going to do is give me an example from a different kind of essay. So in this example, it's about the benefits of recycling. Here's an example of, a weak intro for benefits of recycling. Here's a revised one where they're giving an example of how you could provide context on recycling before just plopping in your thesis statement. And from here, excuse me, I could add in a sentence and say daylight savings time or DST was founded because blah, 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 like give my background. And after I've done that, I can now go back to khanmigo and say, is that better? Or did I fix it? Or if I do that straight from, this section here, I'll be able to just say, check my revision. And then khanmigo will open the chat and say, yes, you did it. Very good job. Or, that context really wasn't enough. Maybe add a little bit more. And once khanmigo has kind of assured me that I've addressed the suggestion, I can mark it as resolved. So the student can go through each of the paragraphs, review the feedback. We also give some positive feedback too. So there's a mix of praise and kind of actionable critical feedback. But once the student is done resolving all their suggestions, this is a completed one. So I've already marked it as complete, but they click mark as complete. And that allows them then to export the essay, because again, the end result of this process is not the student just being like, okay, I wrote an essay and now I'm just going to move along my merry way. We do care about teachers reading students' work and what they have to say. That's the entire point of writing, is communicating. So we allow students to export their essay to Google Doc in Google Drive. They can save it as a PDF or MS Word. And these are the different ways that we kind of allow students to upload them to an LMS if teachers are going to grade the essay in an LMS. I actually think one of you, I spoke to, I think, one of you at a school visit at one point, and I think the feedback I got was like, it has to work well with Google Classroom. It has to. And that was something that, we really took to heart as we heard, okay, we have to figure out ways to make this work really well with Google Classroom. So exporting to Google Drive and Google Docs and allowing teachers to annotate and, link it to Google Classroom and to provide their own feedback into the grading in Google Classroom, that was something that we really wanted to prioritize. So thank you to whichever one of you that was. Okay, so let me jump back. Actually, I'll show you too. This is the main student essays page. So from Writing Coach, again, you get here as a student just under your khanmigo activities. And for Writing Coach, you have this kind of home base to manage the essays that you've written. You can go back and review your progress. You can jump back into an essay if you were kind of working on multiple ones at the same time. But it will save your progress and you can pick something up because, oftentimes essay writing is a multi-day process. Okay, so now I have to make sure I open the right tab here. So let me just make sure I get the right one for the teacher experience. And while I'm doing that, actually, I will just show you the quick summary of the teacher experience. So oh, beautiful, that was on the first try. So with teacher experience in Writing Coach, again, a large part of how we designed it was focusing on supporting students. How do we create something that is going to be Socratic? It's not going to do the writing for them. It's not, going to just regurgitate a bunch of their writing with feedback and then just expect them to do something with it. But it's going to be there through the whole process and help them as they need it without being too intrusive and annoying. But on top of that, we also thought deeply about what teachers wanted and what teachers needed. So not only is Writing Coach allowing teachers to get insights into the student's entire writing process. So all of their chat histories, their outline, their draft histories, the feedback they got, their moderation, if their conversations were moderated, the students' conversations. They also get high level insights. So obviously we don't want to create more work by saying, okay, teachers, here's, 100 different essays, and now you have 100 chat histories to read and 100 outlines to review and 100 of different kinds of feedback and many draft histories to dig through. So we thought about the high level insights, and the point of this is to really present something that before the teacher, begins the process of actually reading what kids have to say and doing grading themselves. We wanted to surface for them things that were insightful or useful, and then they can decide, how deep they want to dig into those different processes. So I will show you what that looks like. Let me just pull this tab in here. Okay. All right, so daylight savings time persuasive essay. This is the teacher's manage assignments page. So I'm going to pop on into this insights page for Writing Coach. And again, this is the report that we'll be releasing. It's technically in a couple of weeks, but we've been saying September. So this will be coming in September. And so what I'm showing you right here is more of a prototype than the actual experience. And this is what we're calling the class report for Writing Coach. So when you, as a teacher, create a Writing Coach assignment, you see all of the students in the class that you assigned it to. You see where they are in their writing process. So I can see if, there's some student who hasn't started or somebody who's really far behind compared to their peers. I know to check in with them. I know to figure out what's going on. I can see when the students in the class last modified their essay or their draft or their outline, whatever it is they're working on. I can see their total time spent, and I can see a breakdown of how much time they spent during each of the writing stages. So if I'm just trying to get a sense of like, if a student spent 68 minutes and most of it was chatting with khanmigo, and then they spent 5 minutes drafting, that's going to raise a flag for me. That's going to be something I'm going to want to dig into a little bit more. So this really allows teachers to see kind of how is the balance of how that time is being spent, and should I look very closely at this student's full history. I see the word count of their latest draft, and then a high level feedback. So if they got, however many suggestions from khanmigo, how many they resolved, how many they haven't resolved, or if they're completed and they didn't resolve some feedback, I might be interested in seeing what feedback they chose not to resolve. We also have then these originality flags, and these are what I mentioned earlier. So if the student is drafting in such a way that indicates that maybe they didn't write it themselves, we will raise these little flags. And there's kind of different levels of the flags here. So if the student didn't do anything concerning, you see this no concerns flag. If they maybe pasted, I think it's around 20 words, we're going to be including the guidelines for how the flags get created in this kind of hover over here. But if they pasted like a smaller number of words, that might raise a yellow flag. But if they paste a larger number of words, or they paste multiple times sections of their draft, or even if they paste, a certain number of words into their thesis or their main points into their outline, that could also raise a certain kind of flag. And we are also taking note, if they're pasting into their evidence or their source, that's not a concern. That's what we expect them to do. But this is really meant to check for, are there things the student is doing that are worth the teacher taking a closer look at, so that the teacher isn't just having to go back into Google draft history and manually for every student play that draft back, or look at that version history for every single kid, because that's just too time consuming. So I can then, if I really want to dig in, it shows here that this student pasted 522 words from an unknown source into their draft, and then during revising as well. I'm going to click on view writing history, and it's going to take me straight to that originality flag. So I can see here, I can open it. It'll show me what they pasted. It will highlight it for me in the student's draft, so I can see exactly where they pasted it into. And at the same time, I can see what their chat history was. So here I can see the student also just asked khanmigo to write it for them. And so that's another flag for me. I'm going to definitely check in with this kid and see what happened and why they did this and where did they paste this from, because this is just not, one chunk of evidence here. And if I am looking at it, and maybe it's a yellow flag because it's not a very large amount of text, and what I see is that the student pasted maybe some new evidence that they found, and it wasn't from their outline, which is why it was flagged, I can look at it and say, oh, okay, that was just, they found some new evidence. It's in quotation marks. I see they cited it. We're all good. This is fine. And I can kind of dismiss that one. So what this does is it really allows teachers to, at a very high level, see where to focus most of their attention. And then when they need to, they can really zoom in and look very closely. And even if you are not as interested, or, if originality warnings aren't the main thing that you're looking for here, maybe I have a student who's on an IEP, maybe I have students who I know are really struggling, I can still just go back through their whole process and see maybe where they got tripped up or what they're struggling with the most, because we'll start right here with their final draft, but I can go through understanding. I can see, did they chat with khanmigo at all? What kinds of questions did they ask? In outlining, I can see what their outline looks like. And again, if they asked for any help or what kind of things they struggled with. And then for drafting, I can see kind of the different chunks of time that they spent typing and, inserting things from their outline, and then any flags that they got. And then in revising as well, I can see the first draft that they submitted, all the feedback that they got, what they resolved and didn't resolve, and even view their chats that they had about the different kinds of feedback. So all of it is here for teachers. It's all transparent. It's all visible to them. But again, the expectation isn't that the teacher's going through this for all, 100 or however many students they have. They're just doing it where they need to. But if they need to, it's here and they can use it. And we're excited too to continue adding more kinds of insights to this report. One of the things that we're looking at next is ways to generate kind of like a summary of the entire class. So, we noticed that most of the students really did well with outlining. There were a few students who really struggled with revising. They really weren't kind of engaging with that as much, or it seemed like, in the writing feedback that was generated, most of the feedback that was given to students was really related to evidence. So that might be a skill that you would want to dig into, and producing that as well at the student level. And so we're really excited to have teachers use this and to continue getting, feedback from partners and from teachers and students, and to continue just kind of building this out, because we really think that this is going to be powerful for teachers who are extremely tired and looking for things that will save them time and help their students improve and allow them to assign more writing without actually increasing that workload. So one last slide for you, and then I do have, I think, maybe a few minutes for questions. So just in summary, how is Writing Coach different from some of those other writing solutions you might be familiar with or might have heard about? The focus with Writing Coach is on the writing process and not just that final draft. It's not just a tool for how to deal with that final draft. It helps students work through that process, and it gives teachers insights into that process. It allows for personalized one-on-one support for students and differentiation, not just in feedback, but from the very beginning, from that understanding and breaking down the prompt. It's an instructional tool with the purpose of producing better writers, not a productivity tool or an evaluative tool with the purpose of producing better writing. It produces anti-cheat flags and other high-level insights for teachers. And again, it allows teachers to assign more writing and to give students more writing practice, not just in English class, but in social studies, science, and other domains, while simultaneously reducing burnout by not requiring them to give kids feedback on multiple drafts or to hold their hands, all 30 or however many is in a single classroom at a time. And it gives them that first layer of feedback to improve their writing. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions. I've also put my email here. I know Danielle is available to you, but if you have any questions specifically about Writing Coach, you can reach out to me there. But yeah, I think we're close to time, but I'm happy to take any questions.
I'm just flabbergasted.
In a good way, I hope.
Yes. I've been gone. I think I just missed last week's training, but I've gone to all of these. I'm a director of adult ed for Nashua, and wow.
That's great. Thank you.
Just wow. You are making a huge difference, and just got to convince all my teachers to do this.
That's our goal too. We've really been developing this part of Writing Coach. We launched essay feedback in November. It gained a lot of traction, and then the school year ended. So we've been developing this product over the entire summer, and we've been working with teachers on break, but we are so eager for a class of students to begin using it and to start getting their input and working with students and teachers. So yeah, if you do get your teachers to use it, please have them send us feedback.
My only question would be, in math, we have a competency called communication. So how easily could you import math symbols into this writing?
Oh, that is such an interesting question. Actually, in the essay itself, I don't know, but
Okay.
Partly you can chat because all of our khanmigo chats support math symbols. There's a math input. So you can chat about the math. I'd have to try that out and see what happens. It is created so that you can do the highlighting and everything like that where the feedback is highlighted. It is sort of meticulously developed to make sure that that works properly because of the way that it constantly gets passed in and out of different AI prompts. So I wonder what that effect would be, but it'd be a very interesting thing to test.
Something to look into.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't know that that was a standard in our New Hampshire.
In Nashua, it's one of our standards for math. We have communication, represent, and solve.
No.
You know, once upon a time, if you could get the right answer, they didn't care beyond that. We care beyond that now.
That's awesome.
Well-
Jody, I see you on the call. Jody and I had met yesterday, and I told her about she was interested in writing coach, and I told her about this. So hopefully you got all your questions and more answered. So we'll be back in touch about that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to for the recording. I'm thinking about our first department meeting, playing it, but and then at that point as an intro, and then as we get users who are doing it, more kind of in-depth training, maybe with questions that teachers could ask at some point in the early fall.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this
Absolutely.
is
You guys
real.
have a lot of PL hours, so we can definitely do that.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for this.